Home was never a safe place. Every night I fear that something may just happen. We do not know whether, we have to call the police again. It's gonna be a long night. It was terrifying. Hi, my name is Sandra. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm here today to share a little bit about my story to empower women and children in Singapore to set them free from domestic violence.
Hi, I'm Christine. I'm a social worker from Care Corner Project Start, one of the Family Violence Specialist Center. I hope that through my sharing, I'll be able to shed some light about the issue of domestic violence.
Hi, I'm Johanna, and I'm a support survivor of domestic abuse and domestic violence and coercive control. I'm an expat from Melbourne originally, and I've lived here in Singapore for 20 years.
People think that domestic violence is a personal matter because it only affects the victim and the abuser. This is not true because any form of violence affects not just the victim, the abuser, but also people who witness the violence.
I was married to an abuser for 14 years. I experienced various aspects of abuse: physical, sexual, financial, emotional and psychological. It really took away my self-esteem and my self-worth.
I survived domestic violence for 9 years. The first incident took place 2 weeks after the wedding. I remember that he banged my head and so many threats and intimidations. I have a daughter who became a collateral damage if he wasn't contented with me. It wasn't easy at all to live with a mask on.
My abuser suffered from many addictions: alcohol, pills, sex, cigarettes, gambling, you name it. Him walking in one night, I was in bed pregnant with my second baby, in bed with my 4-year-old son. I woke as he walked into the room and he stood at the end of the bed, pulled his pants down and urinated all over both of us, in my hair, on my face. And I'm screaming at him, "What are you doing? Go to the bathroom."
People may think that successful women, career women will not ever be a victim of domestic violence. But that is very, very wrong. All they see is, oh, this person is strong, powerful at work, so he must be able to manage life well.
A couple of the members of the group targeted me afterwards and said, "Well, it was okay for you, wasn't it? You had the job, you had the pass, you didn't have to rely on anyone for money because you had a really good job when it all happened. Not the case for us." And I thought about that, and I really felt that pain that they're in that situation and that entrapment. Everyone's situation is really different, and decisions are based on a whole range of circumstances.
The abuser will want to cover their tracks so that they do not get caught for using domestic violence. Victim will also want to keep domestic violence a secret as much as possible. Some possible signs may include things like they skip some social activities suddenly. We could possibly go to somebody and say like, I noticed that recently you're wearing long sleeve. You look very tired. What is actually happening?
A lot of people think of physical abuse, but for me, the aspect of abuse that I experienced that I still have triggers today was the psychological abuse. My abuser had various addictions and he would solicit sex workers, hundreds actually, over the time he lived in Singapore. He'd bring them to the house if I was at work or away on a work trip, and I knew, but I couldn't quite work out what was happening, and if I dared to raise an issue like that, it did end up in a manic sort of temper tantrum and violence, and your own sense of I can't make a decision anymore because of the coercive control. And Jess Hill in Australia, she writes about this, that part of that manipulation is to make the victim feel crazy.
There's a label for that. It's called gaslighting.
Gaslighting.
Yeah, which is actually very scary. There's a lot more in the form of like psychological and emotional abuse.
I went to visit the hospital seeking for injury treatment. At all times, I went up there and I don't tell the truth. I thought that I was going to work out the marriage. I had hope that things would change. So there is no point for me sharing my story with others. We really need the public to stand up for us. When I was running out of the house and looking for Publix, I really like people to come and say, hey, are you okay? It's just the simple things like that.
I started to put boundaries in place at home to protect myself and the children. And as society started to kind of open up and ask questions, he started to hide more, and the manipulation wasn't working as well, and the coercive control was starting to lose its power. So in the end, he left and never came back.
There is this thing called the cycle of violence, and the abuser may try things like begging for forgiveness and give again the victim hope that the marriage will work out.
One of my friends I've known for the whole time I've lived here, she said, Joe, you were fake in your marriage because you didn't tell anybody what you were going through, and it's only now that we know. And I said to her, I wasn't being fake. I was trying to survive. The home is the most violent place. Unless you have community helping you and penetrating that home wall, people don't know what's happening.
So usually, how long does it take for a victim to fully be able to get out of the cycle? Research has shown that it is 7 to 12 attempts. Every single time counts. Let's not give up hope on our victim and really appreciate that they are fighting for their own life.
It's not easy to get out of the abusive environment, because what God unites, that man shall not separate. Until the end, I realized that I was never created for destruction. Violence is never means of conflict resolution. Nobody want to get beat up.
Most victims will find it very difficult to say that enough is enough, I call it quits. Where am I going to stay? Will the abuser be able to find me? Will the abuser harass my family members?
I have no family roots in Singapore, so I had to juggle between work and raising my small child. At the point of time, it was a long court proceeding. The separation also separated our common friends. I completely lost the community support. I struggled so much that I ended up in a women's shelter, and this case is a star shelter. I found such a great relief there. It really felt like the place that kind of hugged me.
Some may outrightly choose to take the perpetrator side. There is another group who may know a bit more and realize that something is not okay, may choose to remain silent. When an individual remains silent in an unfair situation, they have taken side, and they have taken the side of the abuser.
Absolutely. Mine is the battlefield. In order for things to change, I have to change. Take charge of the circumstances, even though I'm facing my ex-husband who was ready to punch me. To conquer the fear and turn it into faith is very crucial. It gets a lot easier to condition my mind. I learned about forgiveness. Forgiveness to me is not to say what the perpetrator did was acceptable. No, it's never acceptable. But forgiveness set me free.
I would really encourage you to give us a chance to work with you. You really do not need to go through this alone, and you definitely do not deserve to be abused.
If I were to look back, I would have taken the PPO seriously. PPO will allow me to work with our differences and problems and separating it from the violence.
My advice is really to document emails that were abusive and text messages, and started to upload and file, and helps you look at things from a different lens and go, hang on, this is not okay. Reach out to friends, family, support, professional, any aspect, colleagues, because I regret not doing that.
The shame of domestic violence shouldn't belong to the victim. It should belong to the abuser. The topic of domestic violence is usually left unsaid is because families are expected to not wash dirty linens in public.
Many people want to talk about it also because they don't really have in-depth knowledge of what is the true root cause of the problem.
Domestic abuse is absolutely everywhere and throughout the world, and it's time that we start to talk about it, to look out for each other and create networks and connections where people can get help when they need it.
If you or your loved one is experiencing the issue of domestic violence, you can call the National Anti-Violence and Sexual Harassment Helpline. It is a 24/7 helpline. If you are facing any immediate danger, do call 999 and the police is able to refer you to a social service agency afterwards.